What's up, guys? Luke here. So this week we sat down with James McCormack, the founder of Dublin Barista School. But we did this just before the kind of the coronavirus stuff really started to bite. So this was recorded on location at the beginning of last week. So it was just on Thursday that things really got crazy. They closed all the schools and that type of stuff. So it was important for us to let people know that we're not just meeting up with people in cafes and everything like that and spreading the virus. So we're being well behaved, working from home, all that type of stuff. I think over the next few weeks we're really going to see a bit of a turn in the podcast. We're going to have to adapt. We're going to have to do a little bit more Zoom or Skype interviews, stuff like that. Me and Mark are going to be communicating at a distance, I guess, for the next few weeks until things settle down. But it's just, for all the sharks listening out there, obviously this is not good for business, right? Shutting down the global economy. And even though, I believe it is the right thing to do, it does make a little bit of anxiety, what's coming next, all that type of stuff. But we have to really think about where we're going to be when we come out of this. So that's what I've been really focusing on. I'm planning for 3 months, 6 months down the road about where we're going to be in my own part of the business, or like I talked to Mark this morning as well. He's making plans too. So the commitment to expansion during a recession is really going to be a big part of what we're going to be doing. I think obviously it doesn't help our downloads if people aren't doing their commute, but there's ways that we can grow, so we're coming up with that as well. We want to get the word out there that the SharkPod is going to be hopefully giving you guys some inspiration, giving you guys some support in these kind of turbulent times. But at the same time, all of the successful people that we speak to, a lot of the interesting stories, or a lot of the interesting things that we have just spoken about have kind of happened during the last recession, if you think about it. So although obviously it's going to be tough times for a lot of people, I think that when we look back on these in happier times, we might look back with interest, look back with kind of inspiration as to how people behaved, or how people kind of pushed through these difficult times. Like, I've never lived in a situation like this where all the businesses were closed down. I'm working with partners all over Europe at varying degrees. This is affecting people, but I think even with the news that 140,000 people lost their jobs this week. So I mean, Ireland's unemployment rate doubled in 2 days, which is crazy. So there's going to be challenges out there, but let's just keep moving forward, as the shark says. Easier said than done, I know, but let's do our best. And here is James McCormack to tell us all about his journey through the last recession and how he came out the other end. So maybe we can get a little bit of inspiration from James.
Welcome to the SharkPod, the podcast that explores business and lifestyle design in Ireland and beyond. And now, live from Greystone Studios, here are your hosts, Luke Curry and Mark Baker.
What is up, SharkNation? We're here for SharkPod 11 with our new friend James McCormack. How are you doing, James?
Fantastic, thanks.
And Mark is here as well.
Yeah, good to be here.
Yeah,
Thanks for agreeing to come on, James.
Thanks
Well, it's a pleasure to bring you up into the crow's nest of this building that's about 400 years old.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're on location again. We're taking the roadcaster on the road. We're here in Dublin, South Dublin, just off Grafton Street at the Dublin Barista School, with James, who's the owner and founder. First of all, it's a really impressive space. It's like you said, it's 400 years old. It's maybe one of the most narrow buildings I've been in, and I've never seen anyone make the most out of it.
I'm glad I stopped doing my wide grip chin-ups.
Yeah, okay.
I curse this building every day, and then I also appreciate it every day, because it's so small, but it's got a lot of character.
So much character going on here. Even from the outside, it looks like it's kind of ye old Dublin walking around. It's cool.
What did it look like before you came here? Did you do much to it?
It was just a shell. Half the street in 2013 was empty, and when we started the school in 2011, we ran it from my own coffee shop, which was just off Leeson Street, or my first coffee shop. And whenever we launched the barista school, it was more like, oh, let's just try barista training and see what happens.
Okay.
And that was the kind of mentality. It wasn't a massively premeditated business plan. And we built a €200 website, and it just took off straight away. Like
Perfect.
It was crazy. And then in 2013, we said, well, we have a business here. Let's make it official. And this was the street that we wanted to be on. And I can't remember exactly why. We just loved this area.
It's a great location, I think, as well. It's kind of a great mix because it's got the footfall from like Grafton Street, people shopping, all that type of stuff. And it's also got a good few offices around here.
Yeah.
I mentioned to you when I worked in Davy Stockbrokers just around the corner. We used to come in here on our lunch
So we still got a few of them.
Yeah, knocking around. So, yes, that was
I think the location has been an important factor for the success that we've had over the last kind of 9 years in terms of just people like to come into a central location. They like to, it has a certain kudos about it compared to being an industrial estate out in Sandyford or somewhere like that. So it has kind of served us well, and the unique aspect of having a coffee shop and a training school and linked and intertwined has a uniqueness to it, which is still kind of not really, I haven't seen anyone else do it before or since we started doing it.
I was going to ask you that, was this, and like sometimes when I see these businesses in Dublin, it's kind of, they spend time in Berlin or something and they've seen something kind of cool and they want to apply it here. But was this kind of a moment of inspiration, or how did this come around?
It was more of this is the building we ended up getting. How can we make the most out of it?
Okay, nice. I like this.
So like when we came into it, it was just like, we liked it straight away. It was just like, it had something, but you know, when you walk in the front door, like we have no retail frontage, so you would walk by us and you wouldn't even know we're here. It's still people 9 years later still say that. I didn't even know you were here. And I was like, oh, fair enough. And so you walk in, and when you walk in the door, that used to be a stable. So that was where the horses kind of were kept. And when you walk up those first little steps, that was the front door into the main house.
Okay, so this was kind of residence upstairs.
Yeah, so over the years, I've heard of everything that this building has been since the 1700s. Like, we've had people who lived here coming here. We've like, this used to be a bedsit, I think, at one stage. It used to be a calculator shop. It used to be a jeweler's. It used to be just all this kind of random stuff. So it's got a lot of history. And the coffee shop was because I was operating a coffee business, and I think from a business perspective, you're thinking, how can we maximize the revenue potential from this space? So that was what the downstairs was for, and it still does that. It still acts like that. And then when you walk up to the first floor, we have a 6 kind of seater training room with 2 kind of high spec machines and all the equipment. So there's about €80,000 worth of equipment on the counter downstairs. And anyone listening, you won't be able to steal it because
unless you bring crane.
It's about half a ton. And then with our training programs, it's a whole kind of cycle of, you come and do our course and you do work experience and you work with our experienced baristas, and then you go out and you get a job, and that's what the uniqueness of our business is. And strangely enough, we don't have a huge amount of competition. There is competition out there, but there's nobody doing what we're doing. And I think it's probably because it's not cool to be training people to get jobs. You know, if that makes sense. In the industry. Maybe I shouldn't be saying it on a podcast, but that's what I've kind of experienced, that, you know, it's more interesting to teach people about the science and to try and be in that kind of like that cool specialty niche, whereas we're training people with no experience and we're just training them to get a job. But we have found that that's what we're good at. And like, our trainers have a social working background, and like, why are we still here, I think, is the question. And like, it's because we found the niche and we stick at it. We know what we're good at. We're training people. Like, we've trained over 15,000 people since we started. We did Amazing. The numbers and all to get a job. So we're pushing people out into the jobs market. A lot of them getting their first jobs. And the training ability is that they have the empathy to train on an individual basis rather than train at them, if you know what I mean. So a lot of coffee trainers are there's a bit of ego involved with, I know a lot about coffee. Yeah. And I'm going to teach you everything I know about coffee, and then you're going to go out and be a wonderful barista. But that's not the way it is in any training scenario. So you have to train the individual because everyone's different and everyone's got their own weaknesses, and that's what our job is, to spot them. And our trainers know everything. Of course, they've done high-level training, and they've done every types of training. They're trained the training courses. They've done a lot. And that's kind of still what we focus on, and that's where we're going to continue going. Because over the years we've done everything. You know, it was being an entrepreneur. You're like, okay, I need to do something. I'm getting a bit like, this is getting a bit too kind of comfortable here. We're doing the same thing for more than 6 months.
Yeah.
So we better go and try and do something else and disrupt ourselves. And not like what I've ended up doing over the last 9 years is starting about 10 businesses within this building, and kind of I suppose losing focus of what we're actually really, where the actual opportunity is, you know.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I think that's probably a common trait with a lot of entrepreneurs. So we've funnily enough, I never said it to you, we've done recruitment from here. We weren't very good at it. We've done coffee roasting, we've done subscription service, we've done just loads of little different revenue aspects of business that, you know, were great experience, but they were a distraction ultimately.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
from the primary.
Yeah, we come back around now in 2019. We're like I kicking myself, like, why did I do all that stuff? Why didn't I just focus on what we're good at? And we'll probably be way over there. But that's the learning curve, do you know?
Yeah, and
It would always be in the back of your head then as well. There's that as well. If you didn't go for it and try these things, it's like, why didn't I try that?
Yeah. Especially in the ones that make like a lot of sense, like you're doing the coffee roasting or doing like subscription service, stuff like that. You might see other people doing a good job of that and say, sure, we could do that, you know.
And I think that's part of the problem, is that you're often led by what other people are doing, and you're taking everything at face value, and the grass is always greener because, oh, look what they're doing. Oh, and then you're over analyzing what your competitors are doing. And I did that. I over analyzed, and I kind of sought their success from my spot. And you know, the coffee roasting downstairs that we did was amazing. You know, we only set the building on fire once. So, so that was good.
So this is the second shell that we've remodeled here.
So we had like 3 fire engines out there once in 2016, I think. But like the experience of roasting coffee was amazing, and we went through a whole process, and like we were, I believe, roasting the best coffee in Ireland in 2016. Because we were a real small batch. Everything was just done by hand in small batches, and it was just, we were making amazing coffee. But you know, it wasn't kind of, I was being led by our competitors, and I was also being led by my employees, because that's what they really wanted. They really wanted to have the kind of name, and they wanted to have people looking at us and telling us how great we were for roasting amazing coffee, and so
being at the center of the whole coffee scene, maybe.
So I suppose there was some ego involved in it, and I was really like, I was brought on along with the story as well. I was like, that sounds amazing, let's do it. And then I was just like, okay, so to get a roastery now and to take it out of here, we need to spend about €250,000. And I was like, okay, well, if we get that money, is it a good investment? Really, when you start doing the figures, and when the romantic element is kind of taken to one side, and with the fact that the industry is already kind of becoming kind of saturated with coffee roasters, and I didn't like the sound of it, where it could be going, and especially I think it was a good decision that we didn't invest back into it. Then we kept on with our training really, and last year we doubled down on what we were good at. What I was saying to you is that we're good at training, and this is what we know. We like the thing about going to a niche area is that we know more about training people who don't know anything about coffee and getting them up to a level that they can get a job. And that's what we focus on. And how do you scale up a business in today's environment? So we created an online barista program.
Oh, really? That's cool.
So we only launched it really very softly this last month, and but it's aimed at the business marketplace. So other coffee shops, hotels, pubs.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, there's probably some challenges there as well, because if people don't have the equipment at home, they're trying to make
so that's the main reason why. Like, it's funnily enough, it's a side of the industry from a practical point of view that we could never really. We never challenged it 100%, but going into pubs and restaurants and other coffee shops is very difficult to actually offer training, mainly because they all get training from their own coffee roasters or other people, and they don't see the value in actually training other staff, because in the hospitality sector there's notoriously got a high turnover of staff.
Yeah.
And why would I invest in my staff if they're going to leave anyway? Is the attitude across the board, not just in Ireland, but kind of across the board. But I've noticed as we were talking about Jocko Willink and all the guys, the
shout out Jocko
dudes. Earlier,
he comes up a lot on this show actually.
Yeah, it's, you know, how do you build a business based on culture, and, you know, how do you keep people longer, and is there value in that? And of course there is, you know, is the answer. And so, and I've seen it because we've been operating like here for 9 years, and we've 4 of our staff are with us 5 years, and that's, I think it's because we're trying to do something right at the beginning, and not really knowing how to build a culture or how to be a leader or anything, and coming through that and saying, yeah, there is a value of having these guys here, because actually my business wouldn't be as successful if these guys weren't here.
Absolutely.
And investing in them, and, you know, giving them different roles and experiences, and bringing them along the journey and stuff, like, because, you know, the reality is you can't do it by yourself.
It's an interesting point of view as well, because there's a lot of companies that that I've worked in before I went into the kind of American tech companies that I work in now, where culture, they're obsessed with culture.
Yes.
To almost to a fault in a lot of ways. But at least their heart's in the right place, you know. And they're trying to retain staff longer, because there's a lot of turnover in that area, especially in Dublin, because there's a lot of competition for that type of talent and all that type of stuff. But if you're bringing it to the kind of the local level here, like you said, you've got staff in maybe a notoriously churny employee environment, and you're bringing it here, that gives you kind of an edge as well. Even if competition wanted to open, you've got that kind of tacit knowledge still in the business that's hard to compete with, I'm sure.
Yeah. So like within this business, like, I mean coffee, like even starting this business, coffee wasn't a passion. This whole business started kind of by chance, and it all kind of started because, like what you were saying, Mark, earlier, is that like you always wanted to start your own business or run your own business, but you don't necessarily know what it's going to be. And so getting into the coffee industry was really kind of, it wasn't like most things that's happened in this industry, it wasn't preordained or a plan that like, oh, I really love the coffee industry and I want to work in it.
Yeah.
It just kind of happened. And yeah, I do have a love for coffee now, and I know a lot about coffee.
Yeah.
And I went through the whole kind of arc of not knowing anything to being a complete snob, to kind of relaxing a little bit, to becoming a snob, to kind of now I'm kind of at a level where I'm just kind of in the middle of everything. And that's how we run our business now. Is kind of, we're not kind of high end specialty. We're not kind of we're not bottom feeders either. We know all angles of the market, and that's kind of where we train people. And this kind of reflects our personalities as well, because we don't want to be that kind of in that the snobbish kind of end, I suppose we can say. And
I remember it well. I used to live in Vancouver. I know kind of what you're talking about there. The coffee, we take it very seriously there, Mark. Indeed.
I mean, I do enjoy going in and getting an amazingly made, well-made cup of coffee, but I always find that there's that kind of that culture that's breeding in those places. I don't enjoy it, and it doesn't make me want to go back as a customer.
Okay. So the experience for you, even though the coffee might be great, the experience isn't there.
So I'll leave and knowing I'm going to get a good coffee, but that's only part of the service. Like, and like downstairs when, you know, I think in 2000, and we opened in 2013, 2014, we were kind of on a very kind of precarious position, because I was running 3 companies thinking that, you know, I knew what I was doing. And we were very close to going under here, and we were doing very little sales, maybe 50 or 60 customers a day downstairs. We were kind of limping in our classroom, but just getting enough to cover stuff, you know. And so we were kind of like treading water, we'll say, for a while.
How long does that go on for, that kind of part where you're just getting on your feet? What would you say?
Felt like for about 6 years.
6 years, right? Jeez, okay.
It felt like it was my whole career. I thought that was what business was about at the beginning. I didn't know you could make a profit. I thought it was just like kind of putting money there and moving it all around the place.
Okay.
I'm interested to hear the origin story for you. You know, obviously it's been entrepreneurship that's been the driving force, and you've been honest enough to admit that it wasn't the love of coffee that brought you into coffee. Would I be correct in saying that?
Yeah, 100%.
So where does it all start?
My dad was, I don't call him an entrepreneur. funnily enough. He was kind of like a Del Boy-esque character. My grandfather, his father, was massively successful. And he came from Ballymahon in Westmeath, one of 15 kids. And he went to World War II London and became a multi-millionaire.
Wow.
So they grew up in Ealing, 7-bedroom mansion, they had a tennis court.
Wow.
He was, they were Jaguared to school.
Class.
So like he grew up with everything kind of. But then kind of when he was 19, his father lost it all. In the interim period, he had built the Hudson Bay Hotel in Athlone and the Prince of Wales in Athlone. Don't know if you know those hotels.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
And he bought loads of properties in Westmeath, because that's where he's from. And back in the day, you probably couldn't trace too much back. So whenever he lost all his money in London in the 60s, they had to fall back on what they had over here. But I don't think ultimately they ever got any money out of it. So it's kind of like in that situation where you've grown up in just unbelievable wealth.
Yeah.
And then suddenly it's all gone. And his dad died. Well, my grandfather died when he was 52 of a cirrhosis of the liver. I think it was a heart attack. But it was, I think, not to go into the deeper kind of side of the story quite yet, but it's my father kind of was always chasing that kind of wealth, if you get me, because my father was suddenly like wealthy and then he's not wealthy and he's suddenly living in Westmeath again. And he grew up in London.
The Jaguars are gone at this stage.
Everything is gone, but he still had that, like, that's what he knew, you know. And he chased that for his whole life, and he never owned a legitimate business. So he was always kind of on the edge of what was legal and what was not legal, I think. And so he extremely colourful character. Big John, as we call him, he's huge. Like, I'm tall, but he was bigger and he's broader. And he was a huge guy and a very intimidating kind of character. But, you know, he managed to build our house in Mullingar with cash. So I don't know where he got it now, but
Ask no questions.
Yeah.
But he in the 80s he lost a business. Funnily enough, and maybe it's why I like this area, but he had a business just on Dawson Street there, an office, should I say, just on Dawson Street that's still there. And I remember visiting when I was young. And he then in the late 80s went bust, went back to London, what he knew, and we moved down to Mullingar when I was about 5. And that's where I grew up mostly.
Okay. And
my dad would then kind of come home on the weekends and work in London, come home on the weekends. And he kind of did that. He used to buy and sell properties, do them up. And he ended up, you know, moving to, his story is crazy. He moved to Cape Town, and there's talks of like diamond mines. There was talks of like one of the guys he worked for was one of the biggest arms dealer in the world. He was in the top 10 richest.
I assume you're writing this book, yeah?
Yeah, no, I've actually started the book.
Oh, really?
And I'm about 50,000 words into it.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Wow.
So I'm fearful of finishing it, but then because then I will actually have to try and publish it.
Okay.
Yeah. Self-publishing is quite easy these days.
Yeah, so that's what I hear. Yeah, so I'm just kind of taking my time with it because I'm just writing this book about the influence my father had on me and entrepreneurship, and you know the effect that it had on me as a man, and only kind of realizing the person that my dad was. The reason why I said he was chasing his grandfather, my grandfather, because that's what the person he was always chasing, that dream of the wealth and the riches, and he was kind of always competing with his father. And I woke up.
Did he admit that?
No, my dad died in 2007, so like I kind of left a big void for me and my family, and unanswered questions. Like, I was 27 or whatever it was, and he just he had a heart attack and he died. He was only 57. So I went through this position. I woke up in 2017, and I was always, my father was kind of a philanderer. He had multiple affairs. He had a child out of wedlock. He didn't have great respect for women. And this is what I grew up with.
Okay.
And he didn't have great respect for a lot of things, actually, politics. Generally, I go into it, but like I suppose when you go back and looking at, like, you form your opinions from your parents, and And when I woke up in 2017, I was like, why do I think this about politics? Why do I think this about that and this and that? And why do I always have this kind of undercurrent of anger in me? That's when I started kind of having this kind of transformation, a personal transformation. And it's all surrounding entrepreneurship. And the modern day entrepreneur, which is my handle on Instagram, is what the name of the book is. And it's what the name of my podcast is, because I'm on this quest to understand what the modern day entrepreneur is about. And also, importantly, what a man is about, and becoming a man. I suppose it's very kind of male focused.
Yeah.
And because in 2017, 2015, I liquidated my second business. I had closed my first business. I was drowning my sorrows in drink. If you look at me now, I'm about 93 kilos, probably 12% body fat. In 2017, I was 120 kilos, probably 30 to 40% body fat.
120 kilos?
Yeah.
It's a big age.
And like, it got to the stage where I couldn't even like almost trampoline with the kids, like you're trying to play with the kids and you're like, Jesus, what's the story here?
Do you think it was the stress of business that was kind of, you were putting maybe your personal health in that case on the back burner, or what was the...
Yeah, it's definitely a way of dealing with anxiety, alcohol, because I gave up alcohol. I'm going to celebrate 2 years off booze. And that wasn't because of alcoholism. It was a personal choice to be a better version of myself.
Yeah.
Because I realized I experienced anxiety this year because I had to close down one of our retail shops. Unexpectedly, landlord just cut us off and gave us 2 weeks notice. And it was like someone threw a grenade on me.
Yeah.
And we had to make like redundancies. I had to make 5 people redundant. I didn't know what was happening, and even though it was all irrational, I was worrying about the future. I was like, oh my God, what's happening? We just lost 25% of our business. And I just experienced this crazy heightened anxiety that I haven't experienced ever. And because historically I probably had it, but I just drowned it in 15 pints.
Okay, so you just cut it off at the knees and then you'll deal with it and kick it down the road.
But what I experienced in, let's say, 2 weeks, it was finished then, I think with booze, you just prolong it and you just end up, it festers longer. And so I went through this experience, and because I'm completely sober and just dealing with it head on, and like I sat at this table with my wife and it was just like, Linda, it's like there's 2 me's sitting here in front of you, and one person's telling me like everything's ending, the world's about to end, and the other person is talking to the other version of me saying, what are you talking about? This is totally irrational. It was kind of like I was having an outer body experience.
Yeah.
And my wife was saying, like, just relax, just calm down, like there's like nothing's happening. And there wasn't anything happening, it was just an experience.
And were you living in the future in your mind? Was that the problem at that time? You were thinking, this is where this is.
I was living in the future and the past because I was judging myself, and I was like, I should have bulletproofed myself. I should have bulletproofed the business. And I'm like, you're employing 20 people and their responsibility, and now I have to let these people down. And so there's kind of like, I suppose there was ego involved on my behalf, and just not wanting to admit that kind of life happens, but also you're kind of looking at your own mistakes, as in I should have done better, and you're just mulling over the past and you're mulling over the potential of what's the future.
Yeah.
But you're not actually dealing with the
taking the action now,
the present.
Yeah.
And we in those crisis situations, you just have to. Luckily, I wasn't drinking, and luckily that I think we talk about entrepreneurship in the last kind of 2 years. I've been focusing a lot on networking and meeting other kind of guys. So having a support network of entrepreneurs out there that I could talk to, and having my wife, who's my main support network, to kind of just throw all my shit at.
Yeah.
And
Nice.
for her to kind of take it on board.
Yeah.
And
like our wives as well.
and but at the end of the day, like looking back on it now, it's just kind of like, wow, that was just like a crazy experience. And now I know what people are talking about anxiety. You know, it's just like I'd never experienced that level of an emotional roller coaster before.
It's such an interesting thing, James, because it's something that we talked about when we were starting the podcast. We were talking about the kind of tribe as well, and how all of our friends are really our friends since we were 7 or whatever. Do you know what I mean? And a lot of them aren't doing what we're doing, or they have different interests now or whatever. And if you're looking for, like you said, a better network or someone to run things by or something like that, that's kind of why the podcast has been good for us already. We've met lots of people like this. So.
I think it's a difficult. It's kind of like a metamorphosis of getting through that stage where your only circle of friends are your buddies from school.
Yeah.
And you go into your late 30s. I'm going to be 40 next month, and it's kind of like, well, you know, I still love the guys, but you know, there's a distance now, and you got kids, and you know, we don't have the same interests that we always had. Yeah. And you kind of, especially when you're an entrepreneur, like you're like literally sitting up at the top of a building by yourself, and you don't have anyone else to talk to, and you have to make the decisions by yourself. But it is great to have people there who've experienced it. You know, I mean, I've been lucky that I've 2 mentors this year, older guys who are experienced and are just, you know, I can ask for advice. There's guys who are at the same level as I am who I can ask for advice. There's guys who are entrepreneurial in the corporate world who I can ask for advice. Like I started our first mastermind group this year, where I wanted to get a group of high performers, I suppose we call them, in a room together and push ourselves, you know, to be better and push ourselves to achieve more. And that's it's an area that I think as I delve further into business, it's an area that I feel passionate about in terms of entrepreneurship and performance more than anything. And getting the most out of each day and pushing yourself, and, you know, getting being here right now is like, oh, well, I could have said no and I could be at home on the couch now, you know?
Yeah.
But, you know, I know there's going to be some value in meeting you guys, and I know there's going to be value from the podcast, and I know we'll all learn something from it and gain something from it, and something good will come from it. That's what I believe. Yeah. You know?
What do you think it was that kind of changed your mindset from the kind of preconditioned stuff that you had from your dad? What was the turning point? Was it reading more books? Was it speaking to certain people? Was it?
I remember the exact turning point. I remember the day. It was, I think, from say like the beginning of June in 2017, and I was in Nerca in the south of Spain, and somebody gave me Tony Robbins' back catalogue, and I was unhappy, I think, you know, because, you know, you're not saying to yourself at the time you're unhappy, but
what year was this now?
2017.
2017.
But like I was overweight. I looked terrible. I felt terrible. I had 2 kids. And I was like, I'm their role model, do you know? And I just started this whole crazy kind of process then. And it was Tony Robbins. I just, like, my daughter was napping at 12 o'clock on holidays, and I'd go up, bring her to the room. I'd listen to an hour of Tony Robbins, and just something clicked. Something he said. And so I decided, I just made a promise to myself that I was going to do something, and I came home and I just started running. That's what I did. The first thing I did. But I remember what he said. He said, get an hour to yourself a day. That's what you need. And that was what I took out of it.
Mark.
Yeah.
Is that the
hour of power?
Yeah.
Everyone knows about it.
Yeah. No, but so I have not exactly the same, but my dad died when I was very young as well, and he was the big entrepreneur and stuff like that. But so I was raised by kind of single mom, kind of like not loads of money and all that type of stuff. But she always gave me Tony Robbins books since I was a child. Like
Awaken the Giant Within.
Awaken the Giant Within. Unlimited Power, whatever, Personal Power. And even like during the recession, I was doing labouring as in landscaping, you know, like lifting rocks and really shitty work, like, you know.
Good man work.
Yeah. And so I always have the earphones in, listen to Tony Robbins, Get the Edge. And all the guys, I said this on the podcast before, but all the guys on the van would be slagging me because they know that here's this Mr. Positive coming in, smiling, doing all this shit. Like,
it's frowned upon.
You know, but it was always...
You don't tell people you listen to Tony Robbins.
Yeah, you think you're losing your mind. I like it though. No, but I think kind of just anything that gets you into a more positive state is going to be something that could be changed for your day. Like, so sometimes I start off of the day still with the YouTube Tony Robbins or whatever on the train. So and Mark hasn't come around to Tony Robbins. I think.
No, I've dipped in and out, and I do think he's brilliant, but I just haven't got around to reading something from start to finish type of thing.
Yeah. I've never read any of his books actually. I just have his whole.
Yeah.
It was just it was just there. Someone gave it to me, and it wasn't as if I need to listen to Tony Robbins. It was just there, and
maybe you're just ready for it then. And it
I was
else.
just the right time, and I was ready for it. And maybe it is having kids is that spark that kind of changes a lot of people. I'm not too sure, but I went from there to just starting to run half an hour and did that for a year. Started running. That was all it really did. And started reading and just started realizing that I was in this kind of closed mindset. And I just went in this amazing kind of, and still I'm on it, like this amazing kind of transformation. And it's like kind of waking up and saying, Jesus, what was I doing all this time? And
wow.
I've done multiple kind of things, but one of the biggest things that kind of woke me up was Jordan Peterson's kind of self-authoring program. I don't know if you've done that.
No, obviously we know a lot about him and stuff.
Yeah, but he has this program called selfauthoring.com, and you buy it for like $29 or something, and basically it's you're writing your autobiography, but through like it's a process that they give you.
Interesting.
And that's when I had this kind of epiphany about my dad and stuff like this. And this is this writing out everything. And I was like, wow, I was becoming my dad. I didn't realize it, and, then I realized I had this, I started this like 5 a.m. kind of getting up in the morning, reading, writing, and I still do it. But just this whole kind of like maximizing my day and trying loads of different routines. And it was only about a year ago, really, it happened. I was just writing. I was in my routine, half an hour, very strict on myself. Writing half an hour, and I just had this epiphany. I was like, my God, my dad died a boy. It was like he never actually transitioned and that's when I felt that I transitioned into manhood, more so. And it was just, it's kind of like, I don't know how it sounds to other people, but it's kind of like this crazy rush of endorphins. I was like, how did I not see this?
A real epiphany, a real breakthrough.
And for me, it was just a massive breakthrough. And in that moment, I forgave my dad for everything he did, because I realized that, he was just still a child, ultimately. And you can understand now the way he was acting. And I've kind of gone more disciplined, strict, Jocko Willink-esque kind of into kind of that kind of like pushing into the kind of adversity, and trying to really kind of break the loop of that cycle that was happening in our family.
That's probably, I don't know if this is true for you, but it sounds like that $29 was one of the best $29 you've ever spent. Got that much out of it.
Yeah, but and I tell everyone to do it that I meet who's who needs a bit of a push, and I don't know if anyone's actually done it, and I suppose a lot of these things is about timing and about wanting to do it enough, and it's a process, definitely. And but my God, like, it's changed my life. It changed my perception. And I still, like, you still fall back into old habits and tracks at times, and you have to kind of slap yourself in the face and say, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Mainly around kind of just those things that are ingrained in you from a young age, your attitude towards things, your perspective on things. And a lot of it is, I read a great book, you probably know it, Mindset, by Carol Dweck, I think her name is.
No,
I haven't actually read that.
She's a Harvard, she sold over 1 million copies of this book, and it's just very simple. It's very much about two types of mindsets, your fixed mindset and your fixed and open kind of style mindsets. And it's very much related to Stoicism, and kind of, so they're all kind of connected, but it's more of a modern way of kind of explaining it, and just taking everything with positivity, as you were saying, and trying to look at the positive aspects of it, and trying to grow out of that kind of, and it's difficult. Like, I'm 3 years at it now, trying to shrug off all my old habits and shrug the old kind of person out of me. There's obviously still good parts of me that I want to keep, but
is there something that you would, so in that case, is there anything that you could have done when you were 25 to kind of get to this point earlier, or do you think it was everything that you went through?
I
Do you know what I mean? It's
I asked myself that
interesting,
question because like I said, imagine I'd learned this when I was 25. You know, I say that to myself all the time.
What were you doing at 25?
I was traveling around Asia. Yeah, so I was kind of like a bit lost, you know. And I came back and I did loads of just jobs, just for the sake of doing jobs. I was a manager in an extra vision. I worked for Sherry Fitzgerald. I was really bad at that job. Was everyone in my family worked in property, and so you know I should work in property, and yeah, it just didn't match. And I went to work in a bank, but I thought that was went to a financial recruiter who I thought was going to solve all my problems.
You just went to the wrong one.
And I worked in
Darwin
the back end of IIB Bank, and I really didn't like that job. Although I got good at spreadsheets, which has a positive end. And then I went and found the job I was good at, which was a sales mortgage broker and doing sales. And I worked for a guy, and actually my first sales job failed because he fired me after 6 months because I wasn't bringing in enough sales. But my wife connected me to her employers who are in construction, and they built loads of properties out in Ashtown, and I was allowed to be the lone mortgage broker on site to sell mortgages to prospective people looking to buy. And that was my takeoff. So I went to work for the Irish Mortgage Corporation. I don't know if you ever heard of them.
Yeah, I remember them.
And I just hit the ground running. They had a book of thousands of people, and I just started slamming the phone, calling people. And suddenly I was selling, and all my hard work, maybe from if the guy had kept me on for a few more months, it probably would have paid off for him. But I was just like, sales were coming through. And for the first time I had some confidence, I just, but it's like when you're constantly getting like fired, basically.
Yeah. It's not great for the confidence.
It's not great. And you're like,
yeah.
Jesus, am I going to be good at anything? And it was just, that was it. And, I worked there for, I think 2.5 years, and it was made redundant. And I was like, they'll never fire me. I'm doing too well.
Yeah.
And so the crash came December 2008, no job, maybe $5,000 redundancy package, which was gone in the next mortgage payment, basically. Yeah. And so I was just kind of like slammed broke, and what's the next move? And luckily my wife was there as my ultimate support network, and it was always like yourself, wanting to start your own business but not knowing what to do. And I still don't know how I ended up doing it, but I ended up starting a company called Good Mood Food, which ended up being a sandwich corporate sandwich kind of supplier. And the company for the first 10 months was just me getting up into the kitchen at 5 a.m, making sandwiches and delivering them on an individual basis into offices in Sandyford.
Okay, and how do they find, or how do they make orders? Was it just like they had your number? And
I built a €200 website.
Okay.
With no online payments capabilities, and it was crazy. People, like at the beginning, was just cold calling. I knew I could sell, and I knew I could, get enough customers. So I knew it's a numbers game, so I would call X amount of companies, and they were all just so receptive, and I think hardly any of them said no. So I nearly went to every single company, and over a 2-week period, I found the biggest ones and the best ones, and I created a route for myself of maybe 15 companies. And I had a 5 Series BMW, which I was too embarrassed, was obviously for health and safety purposes, but the fact that I was delivering sandwiches in a 5 Series BMW.
I've delivered Chinese in a Mercedes.
I have done that as well, except they were burritos. Yeah. And that business just went really well. Like by myself was never any better moment. It was just me making sandwiches and delivering them, and that was it. And to a stage where, and this is going back to Linda being my support network, she gave me €500, and which, before you ask, I gave it back to her.
Nice.
And with that €500, I built a €200 website. I paid €100 rent because I sublet a kitchen, and this is what it was like back then. And I sublet a kitchen in Stillorgan, and the rest went on supplies and stuff like packaging. And literally by the end of that, I had no money, and so I kind of had to work. And I just went out and started selling sandwiches for $2.50 out of a crate, and it just kind of went like that. And I built it up and built it up and built it up, and So like my claim to business fame, inverted commas, I keep on doing that. Sorry, I don't normally do that.
Yeah.
Inverted commas is
bunny ears.
that the 500 euros that Linda gave me is still the money that we have today. Because we've never borrowed money, we've never had an overdraft, we've never got investment.
Businesses that you have?
No, everything has been from just cash.
It's incredible.
And if I wasn't a silly entrepreneur trying to start all these other businesses, I'd probably have loads of it.
Yeah. Wouldn't just be the 500.
Yeah.
But it's cool.
But like,
when we were talking to Chris Lauder, who you mentioned, as well, he said that he was saying the word decision comes from the Latin word incision, which is cutting off different options. It was a recession. Do you think you would have done something, you would have gone out on your own if you didn't have a lack of, your mind had made up for you in a way that you no other option?
Well, like, I think the defining moment was my wife. And I think I was too fearful of, if she hadn't pushed me, then I probably would have gone and tried to get a job. But she knew that's what I wanted to do. And
how did she know that?
Just because it's probably all I talked about, and it's my me probably trying to replicate what my dad did and work for yourself and be the big guy and earn loads of money. That's what I thought. It's not what I think now, but I suppose it's all about money and creating wealth and all that type of stuff, and having that independence, and that's kind of what I wanted. And she was the one who pushed me over the edge and said, you have to do this now. You have to start this.
Yeah.
And literally I started the company in April, and I didn't actually physically start it until November because I was just procrastinating. I was just so scared of going out. And when I went out on the 6th of November, 2009, I think it was, it just, the first day, like I was so scared. And the sandwiches I made were terrible as well. I can only imagine the unlucky people who had to eat them. It's not as if I had this was amazing chef at home making amazing sandwiches. I was terrible at all that stuff. Something I was forced to get good at. But I remember going back to Linda's office, and we took in 17 euros on the first day. And it wasn't kind of like, oh my God, this has been a disaster. It was like almost tears of joy. It's like
cash flow.
I did it. I made some money, even if it wasn't enough to get me through the day. But then the 17 euros went to 22 euros, went to 30 euros, and suddenly I was able to pay myself, And 10 months later, I was basically kicked out of the kitchen because I was just taking up so much of it. My little 200 euro website was bringing in 80 orders a day. And it was still just me by myself. I had to get a little printer and print off all the orders and make all the sandwiches and be gone by a certain time. And it was only at a 2-hour window as well.
Yeah.
And it was I just remember thinking, this is just mad. I mean, but then I also thought this is obviously normal.
This is how you run a business.
This is just business.
Yeah.
But for anyone listening, I was terrible at operating. Really, I was great at sales and I was great at talking to people, but I was terrible at a lot of the aspects of business, like admin and accounting. And I know I was good at accounting per se, as in knowing what my margins were, but I was terrible at keeping my invoices and the actual accounting stuff that you're supposed to be doing. And but from there that's where I got my first cafe. And again, I thought this was normal, that on a Wednesday I went in to meet a guy, and on a Monday I was operating a 60-seater cafe. So and I thought that was normal.
There's more business. That's good. I like it.
But in this little property, it's only on Leeson Street, I had there was a little side kitchen. I didn't care about the coffee shop. I was like, I can continue my business. So then I went from just me basically. And I had employed, the first guy I ever employed was an Asian, a Chinese guy, and his name was Sphinx. He called himself. Do you know the way a lot of the Chinese people will
I've always admired that about them.
Give themselves an English name, and he called himself Sphinx, which I always thought was quite unusual. But so he was my first employee, and then we went to Leeson Street, and I'd taken on 6 employees, and they were supposed to stay with the business, but I didn't realize that they were all scared that the business was going to close down. So the day we actually opened, only one person turned up, and it was just me, who didn't know how to operate a coffee machine. Sphinx, I think, was gone at that stage. So we had to let him go. He wasn't cutting the mustard, literally. And we had 60 people come in for lunch, just me and another guy. And I was just like, what the hell have I got myself into? It was just madness. Like, if you can imagine, plates were piling up on the tables. And probably one of the most embarrassing moments of my life, when Linda came in her suit and high heels, but she was working in the corporate world, cleaning the tables. And I was like,
chipping in.
This isn't normal.
Yeah.
But it just, once we got the grips of things, that business started going. The coffee shop was always was decent. It was just turning over, but our corporate business took off. I employed my brother. We had 2 vans on the road. We had access now, city centre. We were accessing all of the corporate businesses. We went from individual sandwiches to platters. And geez, things were going really well, you know, like, and it was just, you know, I was in my head, this is normal, this is business, and this is amazing. This was supposed to be like this. And until opportunities kept on coming. So a friend of mine who used to work in IMC in the mortgage corporation, he was working for Bill Cullen out in Swords. They needed somebody to run their kitchen. Sure, I'll do it. No problem. Do you want to start Dublin Barista School? Yeah, great. You know, it's just like all the opportunities would come to me, and I didn't know you could say no. It was just like, yep. All you could see was
more business.
Tycoon. You know, I know how to do it.
Yeah.
And it all kind of came crashing down in 2010 when I got audited by Revenue. And that was kind of like a disaster, basically, because like I realized that I was just a really bad business operator.
Okay.
No systems, no infrastructure to accounting, processing, or to how I was paying staff, or to even managing my cash flow, or it was just a lot of stupidity. Bringing in like lots of money, but equally it was going out and not having really any understanding about where it was going.
Okay,
you know?
So you couldn't answer questions. They were saying, okay, where did this go or anything, or you were kind of going through like a shoebox.
No, it was a very strange situation that I got audited in 2011 actually, as a sole trader, and but it didn't conclude until 2015, because the way they work in Revenue is one guy got promoted. My case got sat on a desk, taken over by another person. They get promoted, get sat on that person's desk.
Drags on.
I just dragged on, and in the meantime, I'd started I started 2 companies. Started Dublin Barista School, and I started El Porco Loco with.
I remember. I was just actually seeing that. I remember that. Like, me and my friends used to go there as well.
El Porco Loco.
Yeah.
The burritos were good.
They were good. They were great name.
We just weren't good at operating a Mexican food business. My partner Simon was excellent with food. My ex-partner was excellent with food. He was on MasterChef, and you know, he still is. He's just brilliant with food, and I was obviously brilliant at making sandwiches. So like it was just a match made in heaven. So burritos, a gourmet kind of style chef, and I actually did think that my experience in the kind of the fast moving kind of hospitality sector would be a big benefit, but it was another level when you're brought in the Mexican food business. And you know, I actually ended up closing down Good Mood Food to focus on the Mexican business.
Okay, so you kind of you were chasing the Mexican, so I
took my eye off the ball, but it's like really, if I was thinking of it, that was the business, you know.
Yeah.
And whatever happened between everything, and just started making bad decisions, and like my mother died in 2011, and I just got very emotional with my decision making, and a lot of just bad decisions started happening. And focusing on the Mexican business made sense because there was a boom in Mexican food.
I remember that. I remember there was but there was nothing out that way.
No, there wasn't. And do you know what? It was a gold mine.
Really?
If we knew what we were doing properly, we would have done really well. And the business
you guys could do deliveries as well.
Yeah, we did everything.
Like I remember that was a big thing for us. We're like, I'm never going to bring a delivery before. This is excellent.
Well, this is part of this is part of the reason. Well, I don't know if you were working in Sandyford at the time, were you?
No, I was.
We did corporate
in college at this stage.
Corporate deliveries into Sandyford. That was one of my revenue ideas, because like when you're in the Mexican food business, you're just relying on the night trade, and we were just like in the summertime, just like 30-40% drop, and like, what are you going to do? Like, it was just like painful. And so we pushed out, and we did quite well actually in the corporate market. But really where we failed was the actual management and the communication between partners, and not having line managers managing the quality of the food, not managing people properly, and delivery drivers. There was just a whole extra layer of complexity that I wasn't kind of in the sandwich business. You're doing cold goods and all that type of stuff, so it was a little bit easier, and you get your orders a day in advance typically, so like you had more time to prepare. So it was just like we lasted 3 years. We got 2 locations, and actually Stillorgan was profitable. It was when we moved to the Square in Tallaght, it was when everything kind of crumbled.
Really? Okay.
So on paper, you're going to the place where the busiest Domino's in Europe is, and you think this is. We actually were like high-fiving each other, thinking this was our big break.
Wow.
And
it's the new trend, and
Best place, yeah.
And we
weren't
went
ready for Mexican food.
No, we went out to Tallaght, and we literally we did everything. Like we threw everything at it. We were. I remember we printed 10,000 leaflets for 50% off, and we only got like 2 people back in from it.
Oh Christ!
Dropped like €3,000. It was like a lot of money.
Yeah. And the university there and everything, and it was just not the university, the IT Tallaght or whatever.
Yeah,
I think that would be.
Well, we got some from them, but it wasn't enough. And when you marry in all of the fees that were involved in operating, so you had your rent, you had your management fees, you had your X and Y and Z, and we weren't getting the footfall that we were promised or that we were told was coming through the Square. And we were up until the period we were there, we were the only company to have access to the Square to do deliveries from within the Square, if that makes sense, because we were inside the actual center, and we were able to try and do something, and that didn't even work for us, unfortunately. So it was just a crazy experience, and my partnership broke down with Simon, and we're still friends today. He's a great guy. Thank God we're still friends. It was a positive breakup.
Yeah. Separation.
But after he left, I had to make some very difficult decisions, and that's when a lot of my anxiety and stress kind of related issues started to happen, because I had to close down. I decided to liquidate the entire company, 25 people, and it was just bearing the weight of that responsibility, and the fact that it just drags out. Liquidation drags out. It takes like a year for it to actually, until you get cleared, because it has to go to the Office of Corporate Enforcement, and they have to say that you didn't do anything, untoward as a director of a company and all this type of stuff. And it was an awful experience. I would say,
in a way, was that kind of almost justifying your dad's attitude to revenue and stuff? It's like,
probably
out to get you.
Yeah. I think you're right. And it was also probably my attitude towards revenue as well. And, just the levels of ignorance that were kind of displayed towards them. Now they're the first person to get paid every month, or the first people to get paid.
So was there any overlap between the Dublin Barista School and Porco Loco?
Oh yeah, I was running 3 companies at the same time. So my timeline is 2009, Good Mood Food, 2011, Dublin Barista School, 2012, El Porco Loco. And then Good Mood Food went from 2009 until 2014, because I kind of closed it down. El Porco Loco went from 2012 to 2015, and Dublin Barista School just kept going.
Okay.
And all bankrolling each other.
Yeah.
Was there any opportunity that you said no to?
No. Literally, if anyone came to me,
it's like, you got a business idea? Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
What, food? Fair enough. Yeah, I like it.
Just anything was just like, but I know that's part of the journey that I had to go through, and you look back and you say, like, you weren't very smart, were you? So I say that to myself. Like, a lot of people who are very focused and who are just like, take the long road approach, and they go on a kind of much level kind of arc, but they slowly go up.
Yeah.
I went like this and then down and this and down. I was kind of like up hard, down hard, and that's kind of way I lived for about 6 years. But like, that's all part of it. Like, I learned so much though. Like, it was like doing a master's in business in 5 years, but doing it practically and experiencing the highs and lows.
And now that you're gone into, I know you've still got the cafe element of the business as well, but now that you've got the education, is that kind of where the main focus of the business is now? Is it Is it the school part of it?
It's like, talk about finding your passion and finding things that you're really interested in. And, you know, I would never have said education was something that I would have loved. But, you know, like coffee education has been an amazing learning curve and has opened me up to lots of different kind of areas within business. But like I keep on coming back to it. Was there something there that I love? And I don't know if I just love the community of being with people, and giving and teaching them stuff, and seeing them kind of succeed in their own way, and maybe there's some gratification there. At the moment, like I don't teach that much barista anymore, but I was the guy teaching all the barista courses in the early days, and now I teach business courses, and you know but the education sector is, from a business point of view, it's highly profitable, and you know we've built a brand in Dublin, in Ireland. We're nationwide at our company. Probably wasn't the best long-term name for a company if you're thinking of expanding.
Yeah.
But it works, you know, and people kind of don't think about Dublin Barista School. They just see like us as a brand now.
Yeah.
And you know we're going to train about 4,000 people this year.
Amazing.
Physically, which is a lot. And you know, so the idea is like, how do we scale? Because there is that thing that burning desire to, for me anyway, and it's definitely connected to ego, and it's definitely connected to wanting to beat my father. Yeah. Like, let's be honest. To kind of build a company, and that's very successful on a kind of global level. And you know, I find myself like building an online platform and having all these great ideas, but it's really difficult to, when you're cash rolling or when you're cash flowing a company. So this company, we've had no investment again. We've dropped a lot of money into it from Dublin Barista School is paying for it. And, you know, it's difficult to, like, because I can't employ people in this. It has to be me and it's my wife, Linda. And, you know, we had to deal with this kind of mini crisis with closing down our business this year. We launched in February. We got our first sale. Then we didn't do anything for 3 weeks, just because the way everything kind of rolled. And now with the coronavirus, who knows what's going to happen. So we have a great product that will do well if we now kind of get rid of the 500 euros and start looking for like 500,000 euros. And
that's the interesting thing. So do you think that scaling would come more from the online stuff, or would it be to go to like the UK and do a similar thing?
Yeah, well, we could do both. I mean, like I interviewed Anthony Quigley for my podcast, and I don't know if you know him, the Digital Marketing Institute, the Code Institute. He's been my mentor as well. He's a great guy. And he says, like, yeah, when you're either one business or you're another business. You're not all businesses. So if you're a classroom-based education company, be that and work it. If you're an online platform, like what you do in HubSpot, and you know, just do that and nail it. Yeah. You know, and so I'm kind of caught trying to build a classroom-oriented company, and on the other side, try and build an online company. So I'm sort of caught in this crossroads about, you know, how do I go about doing all of this? And, you know, we've built it and it's there and it's great. We've had 500 people do the course already. And we've taken in our first actual sales. And now we know that there's a market there, but we just have to kind of focus on it. And so I'm looking back on my last 10 years now and saying, okay, what do I need to do now to make sure that it doesn't become another kind of liquidated business eventually? So I think 10 years of experience will hopefully help me.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm sure they will. And we're just coming up on the hour mark here. So we usually, at this stage, we jump into some quick fire questions. But I just had one question just out of interest, something that you said, and also something that maybe it's a good question for you, Mark, as well, as like a parent. This is our 11th podcast, and you'd be surprised at how much this comes up where not an overbearing father, but a father figure or a parent has kind of been independent minded or entrepreneurial, or that type of kind of chasing the kind of dream thing. Would you want that for your own children, or do you want them to take the corporate route where, you know, they get 20 days a year off to go to Lanzarote?
I think that what I'd love for them is to be independent thinkers and for them to come up with the ideas themselves. And if they want to work in corporate, which, you know, is probably a better chance of succeeding than being an entrepreneur. but I also want them to experience entrepreneurship and see what I do. And because like all going well, I'll be doing this until my 90s or when I become a centenarian.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, so critical thinking is a big issue, and like I suppose coming back from all the stuff that I've learned about myself is like independent thinking is so important, and it's not promoted in schools, so it has to be promoted at home. And you know, this whole thing about the cycle of fear is just what like is taught in school, I think, about failing exams or having to pass an exam, or about not getting a good enough grade to get in and do your thing that you're supposed to do in college. And you know, I held that as a chip on my shoulder for a long time, and I think a lot of people do. But like when you get out of that, you realize that it's not really that important. And I want Charlie and Sally to work hard in school and to go through that process as well. But I also want them to say, look, here's the other side of the story.
Yeah.
And now when you get to an age, you have to choose yourself, hopefully.
I think as a parent, ultimately, you want them to be happy. And different things are going to make them happy career-wise. It could be working for themselves. It could be working it could be teaching. It's all different types.
If
so
there's
they
a
have to
vocation there, then it's...
Yeah. Oh, Jesus, I would have... I'd love to wanted to be a teacher or something like that. It would
Like
be easy, you know. I wouldn't have to go through this, become an accountant, be an artist, be an accountant. You know, whereas all along, all I wanted to be is an entrepreneur, because I've so many ideas and I want to put them in place, and I don't like being criticized. I don't like taking orders.
Yeah.
And my youngest is like that. Hates being criticized. Hates taking orders off anyone. So maybe I'll just nurture that, or just keep an eye on it, and then. But like the schooling is important. You know, having a good leaving cert is a very good safety net as well. If the shit hits the fan, but really it is. You want them to be happy, to thrive. I'd like them to have financial freedom, to be able to work wherever they want to work, whenever they want to work. Maybe things will change as certainly they're only...
Yeah, it's hard to know what's going to happen in 15 years. What type of work...
Is it going to be a gig economy? Is it, you know, what way is it going to... We don't know.
Yeah.
But I'm very aware of that. My dad just, you know, had a 9 to 5, also worked on the weekends, worked very hard, but maybe not smart. But I've learned a different path, I suppose. So everybody's different. So I'd like to kind of give them any learning I've got.
Absolutely. Just give them both sides of the story.
But you don't want to tell them to be like you know.
Of course,
I wouldn't wish it on anyone.
Say, I want to be like you, Daddy.
Yeah,
of
well,
course
yeah.
They'll want to say that, but you know.
Yeah, mine. I asked Layla what she wanted to be, and she said, "I want to follow in your footsteps." I said, "What do you mean? Be an artist?" I was like, "Tough to make a career." I didn't want to say it to her as an artist.
It's hard to break a 7-year-old little girl's dream. Yeah, but like my wife's a Gael school teacher, and that's all she ever wanted to be, and she's known that since she was a teenager.
Lucky woman.
It's not lucky
person
as well. So they might end up being like that as well.
Hopefully, good hours.
Yeah, you're
as
right.
Well.
Once they're happy,
Summer's
that's the main
off,
thing, isn't it? Yeah.
Summer's off, exactly. So Mark, let's put him in the hot seat.
Hope
here.
these aren't hard, are they?
No. Very simple. Yeah, it's been a long day.
To start off easy enough. What apps do you use the most?
Oh, I use Oura Ring.
Is that what's on your hand there?
Yeah.
I actually don't know what that is.
It's just a sleep ring. So this is my look at my apps. I look at Stripe a lot. Instagram. So I don't really look at that many apps. I look at Instagram, LinkedIn. So I have a check it folder on my phone that I check. So I check the revenues that's coming into the company. I check Instagram. I have Slack, LinkedIn. That's pretty much it, actually. And I've kind of, strangely enough, I used to love sports, and now I'm kind of veering away. I'm trying to kind of focus myself more, and I find the sports are a huge distraction for me right now. So I'm just kind of like trying to keep focused. And, it's all work related.
Right. Another one I actually just thought of there is actually, what apps have you stopped using in the last 12 months?
Sky Sports. So I don't look at Facebook that much. I've done things like I still look like the apps that I told you are my main apps, but like I don't take my phone to bed with me anymore. I've kind of tried to limit that. I have a rule about not checking my phone before 7:30 in the morning because I get up early, so I try not to check my phone. So
that's a tough one.
It's just generally like so it can be and like when I was going through that anxiety stuff, everything went out the window. All my routines like gone, and that's kind of frustrating me because it was like I've worked so hard to get this discipline, and now suddenly a bit of anxiety comes along and boom, it's all gone. So I've just been rebuilding everything back up. So it's kind of yeah, that was interesting.
Wearing a watch might be a good idea, like for stop looking at your phone. Sometimes I just look at and then I'm looking at the time, and then I say, oh, there's a notification.
Exactly.
You know?
I turned off the notifications on my watch from my phone.
Yeah.
So I don't
Oh,
see
right,
them.
like a standard watch.
I
Yeah.
have that
Old-fashioned watch, maybe.
Or my phone has no notifications whatsoever. Like, my wife goes mad at that because she's calling. Like, I get to leave it alone for.
I noticed you weren't on WhatsApp like until like earlier on. It was like lunchtime, and at like 5 hours, I was like,
yeah, I was putting out some fires and work today, Mark. We'll talk about that later on. I kind of vented to you on the way here. I was like,
okay, what's the best business idea that you never acted upon?
it's a bad question for this.
He's acted on all of them.
Yeah, I've literally done everything. I've tried everything. I don't know. I think the best business idea is still the one that I'm in and still don't have that I haven't exploited enough yet. So under the theme of education, so I want to go all out in education from a coffee perspective, from an entrepreneurial perspective. And so that's kind of where I'm going now. And I don't know, education doesn't seem sexy to people, but like I get a lot of enjoyment out of it now. And I think in 2020, I'll be putting out more kind of educational content as I go through. So,
what time do you get up at in the morning, and what time do you go to sleep?
when I'm on my routine, I go to bed, try to be asleep between 10 and 10:30, and I get up at 5.
That's early. Not as early as Jocko though.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, he's got that weird sleep gene, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Does he that like
So that book, Matthew Walker, and Why We
that
Sleep.
as well.
So he talks about, actually, it wasn't in the, I don't know if, I can't remember if it's in the book, but I listened to him in multiple podcasts, and Jocko's got this like particular gene that you don't need that much sleep.
I might have that.
You say that, but then you put on like a meditation
It's
app
quite
and
rare.
conk out.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, when I sit there, I just don't sit down. That's my trick. Okay, if you could do business anywhere in the world, where would it be?
The States, definitely.
Why?
Probably Austin, because I was there last year.
Okay.
I just loved when I went to the States. It just opened me up to just a different realm of possibilities. And you know, I went to an entrepreneur conference in January last year, 500 people in a room, and it's just like this electric vibe. And I left the place just with unbelievable rush of
Don't say business ideas.
no.
Last thing you need.
I went there to learn, and I wrote a whole book of stuff. It was the guy that met the Dollar Shave Club guy.
Oh, yeah.
There's all these high caliber, unbelievable entrepreneurs there, and it was just like the people in the crowd were like, some guys were 30 million to 50 million companies, some guys at zero. There was just a mix from zero to, I think the highest was 30 or 40 million. And it was just an unreal buzz, and Austin as a city was just amazing.
It's supposed to be really cool here. Yeah.
Did you visit the On Academy? Is that there?
I did, actually.
Did you?
Yeah, I was there. I did a workout there. Yeah.
Really? You just stroll in like any gym?
My friend is actually a member, so I got in, and you know, I didn't buy the kettlebell, the monkey.
Yeah.
Or the
But it's a
battle
really,
ropes.
yeah, like it's
I'm not paying for that. Carry on.
it's a cool place, but like it's like they make all their money in supplements. You know, I mean they've it's a warehouse gym, and then they have another warehouse where they house their supplements, and that's their business. And your man Marcus Aubrey is interesting character.
He wasn't there, was he?
He wasn't. No. And
I have some chicks. Is that what I'm saying?
yeah.
Off in Peru.
Multiple chicks.
Yeah, multiple chicks. Yeah.
Did you ever take Alpha Brain?
I did, actually, yeah.
So did I.
But according to my friend, it's kind of been dumbed down. And it's actually a business that potentially we might be looking at is that kind of like the functional kind of coffee, or the functional aspect of the functional drinks market's very interesting, especially
Bulletproof
with
coffee?
I drink that every day. Like I don't
Your
drink
own version?
Yeah, like I would take MCT oil every day. I would sometimes throw butter into it, but because I fast every day as well, so I don't always throw butter into it, because maybe it's breaking my fast, so I'm always kind of sitting on the edge. So it's but yeah, there's lots of cool things. Like my friend in Austin, he's big into a lot of the functional stuff. So there's like nootropics and mushrooms and all sorts of stuff. That's kind of, there's a lot of interesting spaces to look at, potentially.
Oh, we must take a visit.
Yeah. Research.
Okay. How much money is enough money?
That's an interesting question. When is enough enough? I think money is important, definitely. And to get to a state where, everything is covered in terms of your family, everything related to your family is covered, your house, their education, generally, if all shit hits the fan, that they're sorted. That for me, from a financial basis, would be enough. And then outside of that, it's just doing stuff that I love doing. Whether it's running on mountains, whether it's, doing the entrepreneurial stuff that I love doing. Like, I don't have a massive urge now to be a billionaire. I do want to be successful in that area, but like, to be a billionaire doesn't excite me, Did
it ever excite you?
I think at the beginning that was always the goal, It was always, the goal was riches and wealth and ego.
Donald Trump.
Yeah. Esque. I don't think I could do the hair, but
Right. One more mark and then we'll get him on his way.
Okay. Can I do 2 more?
Do 2 more, go on. Yeah, go on.
Is it who you know or what you know?
Who?
Oh.
Definitely. I think there is an element of what, but definitely from the networking. Like, I only started networking about 2 years ago. Like, actually, like, this was one of my goals. I need to start networking because I realized that my circle was me and no one else. And I was literally like, where is everyone? Like, and I was like, where are all the other guys? And met the likes of Jamie White, introduced me to Anthony Quigley, introduced me to another guy, introduced me to, Devin Hughes, Gar Flower, Gary Fox, John Ryan from Gigable. We talked about the gig economy. I've met so many people in the last kind of year and a half. All great guys, great people. I've met lots of girls too. And I've been invited to lots of interesting mastermind groups, different events and stuff like that. And yeah, so they've definitely opened up doors. And not all of it in a business perspective right now, but definitely from a learning and growth perspective. And like the wavelength I'm on now is that those people are going to open up doors for me, or the people that they know are going to open up doors for me. So that's the way I view things.
I think there's an art to networking, and sometimes people get it wrong. They think it's go to an event, shake hands, going to give you their business card. That's not the way it works. No.
I think it could be in 5 years' time, but you're like, it's all just, it's relationships, and the real relationships are not bullshit relationships. Oh, I better keep in touch with him because, he knows that guy who knows that guy. It's kind of, I like you because you're dead on and I get on with you.
You're doing something interesting or something.
And if I can help you and if you can help me and, like advice more than anything, a lot of guys will just, I'll send them a text or, do you want to meet for coffee and that type of stuff. And yeah, it's building.
Cool. Last one. If you could advise someone to learn one skill, what would it be? Let's say it's the 18-year-old James.
Emotional intelligence, probably. Learning about yourself. Like, if you can understand yourself, like, it's an advantage in a good way.
Have you read the book?
Which one?
Emotional Intelligence.
No.
Very good.
Yeah. Another one to add to the list.
Yeah, it's a big
James,
one. But
might be on the way. Check your Amazon. The package is coming. Might be a T-shirt on your way too. But James Cork, thanks very much for giving us all your time.
Thank you.
Tonight. I know it's kind of late here. We're burning the midnight oil here. So that's
what entrepreneurs do. Do you know?
Yeah, exactly. So we're kind of giving some shark tips out there about working late. But thank you very much. I think one of the big things here was the kind of the self-authoring project or
practice,
practice or whatever. I think I might give that a go. Maybe
it takes at least a month, maybe longer, if you're going to take it, because you're essentially writing a book about yourself, which can be difficult.
Okay.
which is like when you actually like have to peel back all the layers and the layers that are actually there, and like, Jesus Christ, I don't like. I don't really like that.
I hope nobody reads this. Put the tin foil and put it back in the fridge and throw it out later. That's what I do with when I make a lot of dinner. I always like, I'll save that for later so I can throw it out later. Anyway.
Waste management.
Yeah, exactly. So thanks very much for all your time. It's been great, and we're gonna tidy things up and post and everything like that. But
cool.
Thanks very much for all your time.
Great stuff.
Thanks a million.
Thanks a
million.
million.
Next week, we'll
Great.
talk to them.
I really enjoyed that.
Well there you go. There's another one in the can. Thanks very much, James, for dropping by to the SharkPod. We really enjoyed having a chat with you about your businesses. I think that a lot of people are going to find inspiration about that kind of journey that you're on, always trying to get better, always trying to move forward. It's what we're all about here on the SharkPod. For all of the listeners from Ireland and around Europe, thanks very much for dropping by. And those guys over in Japan that are listening every week, give us a shout out on Luke at shark.ie. We want to hear from you guys. We want to see how our international community is doing. If anyone wants to give any feedback or drop us a line, you can drop us a line at luke@shark.ie. And if you want to join SharkNation to rocking one of our t-shirts, we've got our t-shirts on Amazon and they are selling like hotcakes, so get on that, and there is a link in the description. See you guys next week.